Hey guys, Jocelyn here with Fantasia Elegance. I've got another wire wrapped ring tutorial for you guys. This one is a takeoff on my solitaire rosette swirl ring, so if you haven't made that one already, you might want to check it out. I'll leave a link for that. But this one does have some extra swirls on either side, which is very cute, a little bit more fancy. And as you can see, you can vary up how it looks by using different metals and finishes. You will need your standard pliers to make this ring, and go ahead and check out the description section below for the ones I'm using. You're also going to need a ring mandrel. I prefer this metal one with the markings engraved on it, and it's optional, but a rubber mallet may also be helpful for you. And you'll just need a ruler to measure out your lengths of wire, and a little bit of scotch tape, masking tape, or painter's tape. So we're going to be using a 20 gauge wire. I'll be using dead soft silver filled from Rio Grande. You can use whatever type you like as long as it's dead soft 20 gauge. So for your lengths of wire, it kind of depends on what ring size you want to make. I figured out a few ballparks here. So for ring size 5 to 6, you're going to need 3 strands of 6 inches. I'm going to be making a kind of 9.5 ring, so I'll be using 3 strands of 8 inches each for my ring. But there's that, and you can pause it and take a look if you need to. So go ahead, just straighten out your wire, and we're going to measure out 3 strands of the appropriate size for the ring size you're making. And once I have one cut, I just use that to cut the other 2 by it. It seems a little bit easier than using the ruler somehow. So you should have 3 strands of your 20 gauge dead soft. And you're going to set those aside. We'll cut a piece of masking tape now and set this aside. We'll need it later. So just take about a 2-inch piece or shorter. And we're going to cut it right in the middle because we want it a little bit narrower. And just set that aside. We'll be using that later to kind of hold our ring together while we work on it. But taking your 3 strands, we're going to find the center of those. And we're going to start wrapping that around our ring mandrel. And I find that as I'm making mine, it gets a little bit tighter, so since I want a size 9.5, I'm going to start at a size 10. But you may want to make a practice one and see if it gets, bigger or smaller for you, so you might want to start on the actual size you want to make. But I'm going to wrap it on the size 10 on my ring mandrel. And just go ahead and cross all of those strands over each other. And you should have them centered, so these strands are the same length on either side. And once you've got those kind of crossed over, we're just going to start twisting them. And I'm using my thumb and my fingers, and I'm twisting it really tightly, and using my other hand to hold the wires going around the mandrel to keep it all nice and tidy. And once you've twisted it once or twice, depending on how large you want that center rosette to be, we're just going to splay out the wires on either side. So you have 3 wires headed off on the left and 3 wires headed off on the right in kind of a spiral pattern. And I'm just going to bend these down so that the closest wire is kind of making an arch going towards the shank of the ring. And at this point, we're going to use our masking tape, because once you take it off the ring mandrel, it can kind of fall apart while you're making your first swirls. So I'm just going to double that masking tape over on the back of the ring, just to kind of hold everything in place while we work on it. But now take your closest wire on one of the sides, and we're just going to bend that towards that center swirl. And using my round nose pliers, I'm going to put in the first little loop there. So I'm just wrapping it completely around to make a little circular loop with that first wire. And you might find that you need to adjust it with your chain nose pliers a little bit. And you want your loop to be lying right over the 3 nested wires making up the band of your ring. You want it to lie right on top of that and pretty much adjacent to that little swirl we made with wrapping all 6 wires in the center rosette. And then once you've got that centered, we're just going to wrap the tail of that first wire 2 or 3 times over the band of the ring to secure it. And you want each wrap to lie right next to the first one. And you want them to be very snug. So you can fasten that on down with your chain nose pliers with each wrap, making sure everything is snug and holding things together. So just like so. And once you have about 2 or 3 wraps, we're going to trim off the end, and you want to leave just enough to tuck it under the back of the ring band. And I will do that using my chain nose pliers. And as you're tucking it back underneath there, you want to really smush it down firmly so that there is no sharp loose end that can catch on your skin, obviously, as you're wearing the ring. So I'm really just making sure that is tightened down, and I'm checking with my finger as I go to make sure it is going to be smooth and there aren't any sharp catchy bits. So we're going to do the exact same thing now on the other side, again with the closest strand of wire. So we're just doing kind of mirror image. We're going to wrap that all the way around to make a little loop with our round nose pliers. And you do want to, as you go, make sure it's looking symmetrical. So you want to make that second loop the same size and shape as the first one. And again, just refining with your chain nose pliers as needed. And same deal as before. If I cannot drop my ring, same deal as before, we're going to tuck that end under and through and wrap it very tightly 2 or 3 times around the band of the ring. And of course you want to make sure that you get an equal number of wraps on both sides of the ring so that it is symmetrical. And as before, we'll leave a little tail, trim it off with our flush cutters, and then we're going to tuck that little tail underneath to hide the end. And smush it on down nice and firm. You can kind of use the tips of your chain nose pliers and play with the angle to really kind of flatten down that end and push it into the ring so that there aren't any sharp bits. And I'm just checking again with my finger there. And at this point, I'm kind of flattening down those 2 swirls so they're lying more flat on top of the band. And just seeing what we have so far. Now we're going to start swirling out the next wires. And I want a little bit of space between the wires. I don't want them right next to each other as they're swirling out from the center of the ring. So I'm just going to tweak those around a little bit. And then we will make another wrap right next to the first one with our second set of wires on each side. And as before, you want to make sure that all your little loops are the same shape and size so that everything is symmetrical. And you're kind of just making a little row of them going out from the center of the ring along the band. So you should have something like that. And then as before, we're going to tuck that end through and under, wrap it 2 or 3 times around the band, and that will secure your second swirl. And as before, we're just tightening down each wrap with our chain nose pliers as we go. Because these wraps are what's really going to hold your ring together, so you do want to make sure that they're quite secure. As you can see, I'm using my pliers to just tighten it down to the base wires, to the band, with each wrap around that I go. I'm going to wrap this one 3 times. Because at this point for the third wire, I'm not going to put in a swirl. You certainly can if you want to. I think it looks good with either 2 or 3 swirls on both sides of the ring. But for this one, I just decided to do 2. So I'm going to do 2 wraps after that second swirl to kind of space out where the third wire attaches a little bit so that it's not quite so close. I just think that looks a little bit better. So I'm snugging that wire on down, just like all the others, making sure that it is flat and not scratchy or pokey. So as you can see, I'm just adjusting the wires coming out of the center here to make sure they're matching the ones on the other side. And we're just doing that second swirl on the other side now, same as before. And I do tend to prefer my chain nose pliers for adjustments over my round nose pliers. I'm not sure why that is. I feel like since they're tweezer nose, I have, maybe a little bit more control over it. But if you want to try making those tweaks with your round nose pliers, you might find that works better for you. A lot of learning to make jewelry well is just playing around with what techniques really work well for you. So I would encourage you to try different things until you figure out a style that is comfortable for you. But we're just wrapping down that second swirl wire on the other side of the ring now. I'm making sure everything's symmetrical. And again, we're going to do 3 wraps around the band of the ring. There we go. And we are almost done. Hang in there. At this point, you can take that masking tape off because everything is held together pretty well. You might need to rub with your fingers a little bit if there's any sticky residue left. You might find that painter's tape leaves less residue, so that's one tip there. And I'm kind of just fixing those swirls. I felt like they weren't completely on top of the band like I wanted them to be, or as close to each other as I wanted them to be. So I'm just doing some final adjustments before I fasten down that third set of wires. So, like I said, I want a little bit of space between those third sets of wires and the adjacent ones. So I'm just tweaking them a little bit to do that, and then we will, as before, wrap them around, but we're not doing the swirls this time. You certainly could do a third set of swirls on either side if you like. That does require, you might not be able to fit it on a size 5 ring, for instance. And if you're doing 3 different colors of wire, which is something I'll show you guys later, what that would look like, then you would probably want to do 3 sets of swirls, just so each color of wire has its own swirl. It's totally personal preference. I'm just going to fasten down the third sets of wires to the band without doing the third swirl. And again, I did about 3 wraps for those wires. Same thing on the other side. Tucking it through the ring, snugging it on down really nice, and doing 3 wraps. There we go. One more. And it's a wrap. Sorry, I couldn't resist that pun. So we'll just fasten that one on down. Nice and secure. So there you go, short and sweet. That is another really easy and quick wire wrapped ring style. And as you can see, I'm a perfectionist, so I'm still adjusting it a little bit to suit me. But you should have something about like that. There is one final finishing step that is optional. I do feel like it makes it a little bit nicer and more finished. I'm just going to slide mine on the ring mandrel. And bring out your rubber mallet. We're going to very gently pound on that. Don't get crazy with it for sure, because you don't want to deform it. But I'm kind of just smushing all those swirls down, making it lie flat and look a little bit more cohesive and finished. And again, that step is totally optional if you don't have a rubber mallet. That's totally fine. I just like to finish it off that way. So there's your little ring. And as you can see, you can use all different metal types. The one on the end there on my pinky finger, I use 3 different metals in copper, yellow brass, and silver filled. And you may want to splay out the band a little bit. That can make it slightly more comfortable. I just think it looks nicer if those 3 band wires are spread out ever so slightly. So you can do that if you like. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, found it helpful and easy to follow. Feel free to comment below if you had any questions or ran into troubles along the way. And if you could also take a moment to check out my Etsy shop and Facebook page, the links are in the description section below. And of course, if you want to see more of my videos in the future, don't forget to subscribe and click that little notification bell, otherwise YouTube will not let you know when I post new videos. So don't forget to do that. And as always, thanks so much for watching and happy crafting.